Hey everybody, my name's Dr. Jonathan Lopez, and I'm many things in life. One being a Marine Corps veteran, the other being a dad. That's the most important role I have. So I started this podcast to interview dads and just discuss different topics with experts in different industries and really tackle everything from fitness and fun to faith and finance. Tune in, like and subscribe, and we look forward to having you every week. Welcome to Rad Dad Podcast. Hey, welcome back to the Rad Dad podcast, and happy belated Mother's Day to all the moms out there. It was just past Sunday. Got my son to do some special stuff for his mother, and it was great just teaching my son how to respect a woman, how to treat her properly on a nice day. So we got some of her favorite stuff for her. But today I want to welcome our new guest, Bezan Morris, and he's with Raymond James. But more importantly, he's also a dad. So
Yes.
I feel like he's an expert in the wealth management area. We're going to talk a little bit about investing today, more things about him. He's also a Marine, and he went to the Naval Academy. So Bezan, welcome. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Jonathan. So I grew up in New Jersey. I was the youngest of three brothers. My oldest brother was born in India before my parents immigrated here, and then my middle brother and I were natural born citizens. So, my older brother was the anchor baby. I was the added bonus. But yeah, grew up in New Jersey, went to the Naval Academy, decided to take the Marine Corps option because I wasn't enough of a glutton for punishment after going to school for 4 years. I had to go in the Marines and served as an artillery officer for 6 years. So I had a couple deployments under my belt and then made the decision to get out back in 2003. My wife and I decided we were going to plant the flag in Arizona. So we ended up in Phoenix for the next 8 years and worked in the construction industry for a little while, and then had the opportunity to join on the fulfillment arm of a little startup company. Not sure if you heard of them, Amazon.
No, never heard of them.
Yeah, tiny little tech startup company. Worked in their warehouses for about the next 7 peak seasons. Eventually went over to Chewy.com and was ended up as the general manager for their fulfillment center down here in Grand Prairie. So moved to Texas back in 2013, been in Fort Worth ever since, and married 19 years, have 2 awesome kids. My daughter Ellie is 13, going on 14.
Going on 30, right?
Oh, yeah, if she makes it that long. There are days where we debate, like, you may not make it, child. And then the little guy, my son Bradley, is 9. So he is just starting to smell badly. So that he's growing up.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's like,
I know way too much about that smell. Growing up with 2 brothers myself, and of course we were growing up together, so we were stinky. But
that's right.
I see that in my son as well. So tell me more about the whole Naval Academy, on how you applied for it, what the process is like, and any advice you would give to your kids or anyone else out there looking to apply.
So I was lucky in the sense my older brother decided to go there. So when he started looking at the school, his junior year, I was in the 7th grade. So we went down and kind of saw the campus and walked around, and
it's a beautiful campus.
Beautiful campus.
Yeah. If people out there, if you've never visited Annapolis, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
go. Maybe you'll talk your kid into applying.
That's right.
Naval Academy.
But I just kind of fell in love, and so that's where I wanted to go. That's what I wanted to do. And they had some displays about Marines coming from the academy and what that was, and it to my young 7th grade heart, right? That was it. That's what I wanted. So that was always the goal. Going through high school, I never applied anywhere else. I had no safety school. Like that was it.
That's got to be tough. You're like, don't get in.
Even my parents were like, really? Nowhere? Like, we live 10 minutes from the Rutgers campus, and they're like, you want to apply to Rutgers? Like, not worried about it. Like, we're going to roll with
I
this.
like the confidence.
That's right. It worked out. So I think the biggest difference with that school versus any other university is just you have that congressional appointment piece to it. So you've got to be, academically qualified. You have to physically qualify. So, there's fitness tests. You have to go through medical exams, all of that piece. And then you have to get that congressional nomination. So whether it's a senator or a congressman, some people I wasn't good enough to get like a vice presidential nomination or anything, but I had to go to the senator's office. I remember sitting in a kind of a boardroom setting with about 6 gentlemen. They were all former grads, and they just kind of pepper you with questions and a lot of the things you would imagine. Why do you want to go there? But, tell me about how you define integrity. If you saw someone doing this, what would you do? And kind of some of those leadership questions. And as a high school senior,
you're asking for help.
Yeah,
can I phone a friend?
Yeah, like I haven't learned this. That's why I want to go. But it worked out, and spent the next 4 years there. And then, like I said, when you go through that process, you have the opportunity to kind of see everything that the Navy and the Marine Corps have to offer. And your summers are spent training in some of those different environments. So I've been on a submarine, and after spending 2 days on a sub, I absolutely have no desire to ever go back on a submarine.
Well, you already talked about smelly boys and stuff.
Oh, man.
I can only imagine the smells on a submarine.
Yeah. Really cool experience, but I do not want to be underwater that long. That's a little freaky.
Well, yeah, you can't go out and get a tan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the Marine Corps just kind of spoke to me, and that's where I wanted to go. And I had a chance to meet a couple other artillery officers in my time there. So again, like going to TBS, like I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an artillery guy. So shooting really big guns. I mean, it's a 9-year-old boy's dream job, right? Run around the woods.
Yeah, shoot a big
and
gun,
shoot really big guns and blow stuff up. Like, heck yeah, I'm going to go do that. So that was it. That was really just kind of being exposed to it. And so both my older brothers are career naval officers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, seeing them kind of go through their experience. My oldest brother, he's 10 years older than me. So he got commissioned in 1988, right after Top Gun got released. So it's kind of funny.
So that was his recruitment video.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody wanted to be a Navy pilot. He spent 30 years in the surface community. So he drove ships for that time. And
so he was a surface warfare officer.
He was, yeah. Okay. And then my middle brother, the one I talked about who had started looking at the school, he actually went as well into the surface community. So just kind of seeing them and like the experiences that they had, the places they got to go, the type of leaders that they were becoming, it's like that was really, I don't think I would have looked at it otherwise if it wasn't for that. So, I get asked that a lot, like, oh, will you let your kids go do it? Because I did. I went to combat. I was in OIF. I was there in 2003 when we invaded Iraq, and went back in 2004 on a job and was doing stuff in the Persian Gulf. Like, yes, they were dangerous pieces to it, and you understand it. Looking back on it now, like you realize like there were a lot of things I was really lucky around. And would I allow my kids to go do it? Absolutely, right? Because having that type of exposure was awesome. And I think a lot of people don't even, they kind of poo-poo the military as a whole because it's like, oh, it's too dangerous, or not my kid, or somebody else can go do that. Like, I want my kids to look at it. I want them to explore that option. And if it speaks to you like it did to me, and having that sense of service, go for it. Absolutely, I would love it. Although I tell my children, I joke with my children, my wife gets mad at me because my wife is Air Force. But I'll tell my kids, like, you can join any service as long as it's not the Army. So as long as you don't join the Army, I'm good.
I joke with people, I'm like, yeah, if I had to do it all over again, knowing what I know now, and if I had that crystal ball to look into, I'm like, oh, well, you're going to tear your shoulder when you're in the Marine Corps. Maybe I should do the Air Force. But no, same thing with my son. If he wants to go in the Marine Corps, I fully support it. Even if that's the enlisted side, officer side, whatever it is, it teaches you, it gives you a great foundation.
Sure.
Of who you are as a person and how you handle adversity. And we had a conversation over coffee earlier about it on, I think about some of the key points in my life that were, I would say, make or break moments or obstacles, and, losing a business and having to shut it down, going through a divorce, sitting in Reagan National Airport with $20.
Yeah.
It teaches you who you are at your core. And, how, can you pick things up and continue moving forward, or are you going to give up at that point? And that's one of our core values that I go over with my son is we don't quit.
Sure.
And I've explained many a times why. And I'm just like, there's always more work to be done. And the people that do the work become successful.
Yeah.
And, clearly it's happened with you and your brothers. You did the work in the military. My older brother's still in too. He's a career Navy guy.
Oh, okay.
He's a gosh, what is he now? I don't remember. I don't know all the Navy terms anymore. So he's somewhere up there. I think he's below a chief.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but he really thrives in that structure of the military. He's tried to get out before and tried to go to college, and no hard feelings, bro. But you weren't very successful at it, and he went back in and then thrived again. So there's people out there that need that structure and really thrive in that environment. So if my son's one of those people, why the heck not? Yes, it's dangerous. And I don't know if you had to do this when you're at OCS, but we had to sit down one time and write a letter to our parents as if we were our officer telling our parents that we had died in combat.
Oh, wow.
And that whole process just really puts you foot to foot with your own mortality.
Sure.
And going through the pandemic like we just did, several people were like, "Why aren't you worried about this?" I'm like, came to grips with my mortality a long time ago. I was like, when you literally have to sign your life away and then put down the dependents for your life insurance policy.
Who's going to get my SGLI?
Who's going to get that? So it really brings that to the forefront on that we're all mortal. We could die after this podcast driving home. Who knows? Sure. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But it's really trying to live in a moment and understand some people thrive in that structure, some people don't. And my son can do whatever the heck he wants. And so
yeah, it's funny that so my mom and dad, no military experience at all. So they got asked a lot. Both of them have passed away in the last couple of years. But I mean, they always tell a story. People always ask, "How did you end up here? How did your boys end up doing this?" And my brothers and I will tell you, it's like, have you met my mom? Like, do you know what
she was our drill sergeant.
Do you know what it's like being raised by an Indian immigrant woman who was a teacher for 15 years before she came to this country? Like, there was no such thing as B's in our house. Like, you got A's or you didn't live. Like, that was the expectation.
You didn't eat.
Yeah, it was that simple. Like, going, sometimes you look back on that, it's like, man, the Marine Corps was a relief. Good Lord. Love you, Mom.
Yeah, you're like, I have guaranteed food. I have to make a B.
I can screw this up and I'll still get fed. Okay. No, she never did that. I'm just kidding. But
it's those experiences that we think back on quite a bit. And like I said earlier in the intro, it was Mother's Day. I shot my mom and several other people a text message, and I see my mom quite a bit, and she had to work on Mother's Day, so she's always fine with the text message. She just wants to hear from her boys. And I teared up like texting her, and you think back at what your parents have taught you, and one thing that my mom taught me was how to cook, and it's one thing that I love to do now, and I do with my son. And there's been plenty of people out there, especially women, that were like, "Oh, you cook? That's impressive." I was like, "Well, look at me. I'm a growing boy. I like to eat. So if I don't cook, I don't eat. It's a waste of money going out all the time. So and it gets very expensive."
Yeah.
So learning how to cook from my mom and learning just the work ethic from my dad really taught me a lot. And it sounds like you grew up in the same kind of environment, learning from both of your parents.
I did. There were definitely a lot of lessons from both of them. And some of them were, I hate to say it's like what not to do, but it was also like, okay, let this be a warning to myself, right? As I look in the mirror and as I get older. So my father passed away in 2020, actually right as we went into the pandemic. So there's a whole story with that. But he had heart disease, and he had smoked for decades. He had a quadruple bypass when I was 10. So, I mean, years ago, I had always had heart problems and back problems. And
so you could say he neglected his health a little bit.
He prioritized other things than his health. Okay. Yes. Yeah, I'll put it like that. I don't fault him for it. It's just, it wasn't his nature. He wasn't someone who took eating. I shouldn't say that. He took eating seriously.
He didn't take healthy eating
He didn't take healthy eating seriously. Yeah, he enjoyed his food. He liked his sweets, and I couldn't tell you ever seeing him go for a run or work out or anything like that. And I think it just wore on him over time. So it's like, yes, Dad, you worked really hard. You did all these things. You gave us a great life, right? I grew up in a upper middle class neighborhood. I went to a good school. I had all those opportunities. But it'd be really nice now to have my dad with me, to be seeing my kids play baseball, doing those things. Like I would have taken that over, those opportunities, and maybe if those choices were a little different. Mom was really the driving factor, like she was the one where we grew up in New Jersey. Dad worked in the city. So you can imagine commuting into New York City every day for 20 some odd years,
That's a rough life.
Oh yeah. He was gone before I was up, home after I was in bed most nights. But Mom was like the driving force. She was the one who like kept us on task, got us to things, made sure that we were doing what we needed to do. So, as I look back on that, it's like, wow, like I was really blessed and lucky that way. Yeah, she was hard. She was strict, right? She was tough on us. I was also the third one, right? Like there wasn't anything I was doing that she hadn't seen at least twice before. Right?
Which is funny because usually the youngest gets away with all the stuff.
So if you ask my brothers, they will tell you that I was spoiled. And truth be told, I was. I was spoiled compared to them. Yes, I was. But compared to my friends, no way, man. I had the strict mom, But I think from her, I gleaned that work ethic that, hey, if you put in the work, it will happen for you. And it may not look the way you want it to, but if you're able to just, if you set a goal and you focus on it, go for it, go get it. And there's nothing that can stop you, but go get it, go do it. Don't accept being in the middle. I think that's probably one big thing that I've tried at least, working on passing on my kids is, good enough is not good enough, right? If you're going to go do something, give it your all.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? And at the end of the season or whatever the time, and it's not what you want, and you want to walk away and do something different, great. But know that you gave everything. Know that you gave it your all. And if it's not where you really want to be, don't be afraid to change that direction.
So basically, you're setting the example for them. And one thing that we connected on was how you set the example for them in the philanthropic world. And I used to, both obviously for us, veterans are close to our heart, being veterans ourselves. And I used to manage a federal grant for the University of Arkansas called Veterans Upward Bound.
Okay.
And we helped veterans get into college. So all the prep work, if they needed extra classes, tutoring to take tests to get in. And we streamlined the whole process to help them understand their VA education benefits and what they qualify for. And it's a very needed program because veterans get out of the military either 4 years or beyond that, and they don't have a clue out there on what it is. Unfortunately, the transition process is horrible. I actually wrote my dissertation on the topic.
Is that right?
Yeah, on the transition from veteran to school and how the whole process works and how it's just a cluster. And these veterans have other issues on top of just going to school and trying to figure out higher education that really makes it a complex process for them. And I bring it up because I want you to share with us and everyone else about, Cowtown Warriors, what you guys are doing in the Fort Worth area and what kind of started it and what opportunities are there for other people to get involved?
Yeah, so Cowtown Warriors, we're a 501c3. We are based in Fort Worth. It started back in 2013 by a couple of guys who just kind of looked around and said, we can do better. And kind of the official slogan is like, we just want to help veterans' lives suck a little less, right? We may not be able to solve all those problems, but we just want to do something to make their lives better. Started as like a happy hour where it was just, hey, let's try and get some people together, maybe some people that are willing to write some checks and just help some people out, to our annual event now, which we hold at the Fort Worth Club. We take over the 12th floor of the Fort Worth Club. We have about 400 seats there, and we just have it's a black tie affair. We've had everyone from the former commandant come speak.
Oh, nice.
We had former Governor Perry come speak a couple years ago. So it's just been and the best part, I think, when you look at the organization and what we're able to do now, we're able to really make an impact on someone's life. We had one of the Tuskegee Airmen lives in Dallas, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and we're wheelchair bound. Wasn't really leaving his house because he didn't have a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Like, we bought him a van. We bought him a wheelchair accessible van to be able to do that. We had another Vietnam vet that we helped out who was on a walker, and he just couldn't go take a shower, right? Like, this guy went and served his country, and because his rating wasn't where it needed to be, one, we helped him with that to go back to the VA and try and get his rating up. But then two, we went in and just remodeled his shower. You spend a couple grand and do that. Like, it's a quality of life for somebody like that. So,
sure. And that generation of veterans, in my personal opinion, is the most neglected.
Oh, absolutely.
Unfortunately. My uncle, I talked about him on the first podcast or second podcast, Vietnam vet, gunnery sergeant, and everything was just neglected. When, from the VA, from, people telling him, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
And, I mean, these are the vets that came back and they were spit on. So we owe a lot to them. So that really fills my heart to hear that.
Yeah.
Your organization is doing that for folks out there.
Yeah, and we're always looking. I mean, if there's somebody out there that wants to get involved, we're kind of particular. The board is all Marines, so to all of my other service members out there. But we will take volunteers to help. We always have stuff going on.
I can only imagine the shenanigans that it takes to get on the board. If it's run by Marines.
Well, and then you can imagine the board meetings themselves, right? There's a lot of things where it's like, okay, don't put that in the notes.
Can you scratch that, please?
Yeah, scratch that. This is an off the record conversation. But yeah, we'll be holding the ball again next year. It'll be the last Saturday. I think it's February 25th, 2023.
Okay.
And then we are planning another. We did a clay shoot last year because of COVID. We couldn't do it in 2021. We did this clay shoot in September. We're going to do another one coming up. So, if you're interested, just go to cowtownwarriors.com and check us out. And, we've got a phone number on there. Just feel free to reach out to our executive director. He's always answering his phone and, helping raise just awareness, and then just being a support network for local veterans. So we keep it to North Texas veterans. So a lot of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we will go out and help out some folks in the Panhandle. But it's everything from helping just with some cell phones to, hey, let's cover this vet's mortgage for 3 months just to give them some breathing room. Right?
I can imagine there was a lot of that during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Finances getting cut off, and several veterans, live off of a fixed income in general. So any kind of extra that you can toss their way goes a long way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the nice things, the way that the organization has been constructed, is that, we get to kind of dictate some of those terms. It's like, hey, we'll help you, but you need to go to financial counseling, right?
Sure.
Or you need to, you need to see this person, or, you need to get help in this aspect. Like, we'll help give you the breathing room, but then you've got to because it's also an empowerment, right? You want to be able to empower that veteran or their family to say, look, you can do this. We'll be the support for you, but you've got to take some of that ownership too. And I think, kind of tying back to what we talked about earlier, a lot of times, like, that's that piece coming from military, coming from the Marines in our case, but whatever service it is, there's that ownership piece that not everybody gets, that, like, you're part of the solution. You're as much the problem, like the mistakes that you made or the decisions you made.
Sure.
But you can also that also gives you the power to be part of the solution.
Yeah, I think Jocko refers to it as extreme ownership.
I won't. I have never read the book. It's in my audiobook library, so I haven't read Jocko yet. So I don't want to do him a disservice. But yes, that I've read enough about the concepts there. That's like, yeah, you're part of the solution. And I think a lot of times when you see veterans who are struggling with that transition, it's just a reminder. Hey, you can fix this.
It is, and it reminds me. So I grew up in the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, okay.
And Denzel Washington is one of the biggest celebrity contributors for
Sure.
that. And I can't remember if he grew up in the Boys and Girls Club or not, but it's very important to him. And one thing he always said was, he's always willing to give a hand up, not a handout.
Yep.
And people remember that. And again, it goes back to that military service of, we're willing to help others, but we're a team here. And we can't sacrifice the greater good of the team for one person. Like,
Agreed.
You've got to pull your own weight. You've got to do something to help yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And, tie that back to why we're here today, right? Like, that's the same message I want my kids to have. Like, I want them to understand that, my son struggled with baseball as he got started. The pitchers are too fast, or it's unfair. Their umpire doesn't. It's like, you are part of the solution. You have to swing the bat to be productive.
Yeah,
like,
it's all about the repetitions.
Yeah,
Go out there and get them.
It's a lesson learned. He's 9. But you have to learn that. You have to learn that. My daughter picked up wrestling this year.
So, nice.
Yeah.
I wrestled in high school.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I know it doesn't look like it, but I wrestled at 145 and now I'm 175.
There you go.
That's 30 pounds ago. 30 pounds ago, 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, so I started getting into jiu-jitsu again a couple years ago and got back on the mats pretty consistently. My kids did it for a little while. And then she's in middle school and, somebody approached her about it. And she said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I won't lie, like I think it was her second match, she got wrecked. she got pinned and she was mad and, oh, the other girl was this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, apparently she was doing more than you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the wrong thing. Like, she was not happy to hear that.
She worked a lot harder than you. How about that?
But since then, she's really taken it and said, okay, like if I can solve this, I'm going to go solve it. And her zone meet she went to, she had 3 wins. She beat a girl that was about 15 pounds out of her weight class. They were just kind of doing an exhibition and she pinned her. Like, she's all excited about the district meet coming up this week. So like, she is starting to learn, like, hey, if I put in that effort, and that's
it's
a great,
rewarded.
yeah, and that's a great, like, as a father, you look back on that, it's like,
I did that. Yeah, you understood it.
Nailed it. Yeah.
Let's forget about all these things they didn't get.
That's right.
And, that one that they got, yes, we'll chalk that up to a win.
Yep.
Yeah, and I see that with my son as well. Like, just learning hockey, he tried t-ball. I mean, the kid's brain just goes here to there. So baseball's a boring sport. I grew up playing baseball, so I can say that. It's slow moving. Whereas ice hockey, you got to just worry about staying on your own 2 feet and not hitting the ice. So your brain's working to do that, and then you're learning all the different skating aspects and then the game of hockey. And it's been great to learn for him and with him. And it's things that bleed out into other things in our life where we teach that to them. And, one of the things that stood out for me with you is your background as a wealth advisor. And, you worked for Amazon and Chewy, the big corporations, and you kind of took a leap to do something else.
Yeah.
Tell me about that process and, then break it down into, what advice would you give your kids on how to invest? If you listen to the first episode, I told people I invest for my son and I show him the market and what we're looking at and kind of stocks to buy and here's how it grows and multiples and you can utilize that money later on in life for either an investment or college, whatever you want to do. So, I had a really hard time explaining stocks to my son. And he didn't understand like partial ownership, but being a piece of stock or common stock. So you're the expert. You do it. And then I'll show him the video.
I think, so I'll start with the first piece. Like I had wanted to do this when I first got out of the Marine Corps. And I wanted to be an advisor. I had an advisor who was introduced to me from my brother. And I met with him and said, I think I want to do your job. I really like it. And his name was Jack. Jack sat me down and was like, 2 things. 1, you have not saved enough money to go do this because it's going to be a hit on your income. And 2, your entire work and life experience has been, as we said, shooting big guns and chasing bad people. Not really the way to impress a business owner.
That's not the proper career path for gaining clients.
So he had said then, he said, look, just go do something else for a little while. And if you still want to do it, I'll be here. The industry will be here. You know, you'll have your opportunity, but go get some of that other life experience. And that was really what kind of drove me into the other realms, you know, being in the construction industry and then getting in with Amazon and being in fulfillment for as long as I did. But there was still always that desire for this role. And I started to define it further on around, it was really a sense of service, right? It's
Sure.
being able to serve clients and working with people to help them achieve the things that are important to them. And being able to kind of structure that for a number of years and keep going back to it and go, okay, am I ready? No, not yet. You know, I still want to understand more. I still want to learn more. And then, you know, 2017, my wife had a relatively minor surgery or relatively major surgery, which took her down for a little while. The kids were getting older, and we just kind of had that heart-to-heart conversation. And she said, look, like, I was the general manager of a fulfillment center at that point. Peak season comes around, which is basically Thanksgiving till Christmas Eve, and I'm a ghost in the house. I come in, I mumble a few words, I go to bed, I wake up before everybody else gets up.
Yeah,
I'm out
you're
the door.
gone. You're just
Like it's you know, there's goods and bads with it. Great industry, it's a ton of fun, but I mean, you're gonna earn your paycheck. You know?
yeah. During peak season, you become a ghost in your own house, a stranger in your own house.
And then as Chewy itself was kind of going through its growing pains as well, there's just added stresses to that. And she was the one who sat me down and said, look, you haven't seen the inside of a gym in years. You are working 90 hours a week. The kids don't see you. You're miserable. You're tired. Like, she said to me, like, there's moments, right, that you just go, wow, like, that really hurt. She said, you're becoming your dad. You're becoming the person that you said you never wanted to become, right? You're not involved with the kids. You don't show up to their games. When you do, you're tired, or you're on your phone, or you're doing, like, and it wasn't out of anger. She wasn't angry at me. She was worried, right? She was literally like, you are going to die.
Sure. All that stress, you're not taking care of your health.
All of those things, you know. So it was a shocker, and, you know, again, just kind of sitting down and talking about it and figuring it out. Just like, look, if we're gonna make this leap, let's do it now, right? You're in your early 40s, so, you know, if we screw it up, we got time to recover. So, you know, and when having her on board and kind of being that partner and kind of sitting down with the kids and going, hey, Daddy's gonna do this now, and it's gonna be really different. And it was a complete, you know, career left turn. Like, hey, let's go do this. And all that to say, I bring that perspective when I sit down with someone and talk to them and go, you know, it's not about where you are. It's about how are we going to get you where you want to go. So that's really
that's why you're an advisor.
That's what it is, right?
You're telling a story. You're understanding what their goals are and advising them on how to accomplish that and how to get there.
Right. Based on where you say you want to be, here is my recommendation for the things that help get you there. So, you know, how would I explain it to my kids? Or, you know, how do you explain the markets to folks? You're buying ownership, right? Like you said, you're buying in companies that you believe in, typically. Or
I
better
believe in
yet,
their financials.
Yeah.
There's some of their values or some of their political stances I do not believe in.
But you know what? For some people, that's enough to say, I don't want to be there. And that's okay. So, for example, I met this was another advisor's client. When I was getting started, I would sit in on other meetings. And this individual who came on to be a client said, my husband died of throat cancer. My father died of lung cancer. If you invest me in a cigarette company, you're gone. I'm like, it won't happen.
Sure, no, I get that. Yeah.
I totally understand that, right? But that's part of the job then, is actually saying, okay, like, how do I help you accomplish your goals by putting this little caveat on things? Hey, we're not going to be in this type of company. Here's how your portfolio overall gets affected.
Yeah,
by
you
doing
look at
that.
the tech companies right now that are losing value in their stock because people are going away. They don't believe in their political views, and, you know, some streaming services as well that's happening too.
Yep.
And it's just, I I'm glad to finally see people putting their money where their mouth is.
And that's what it comes down to. And for some people, it's not that big a deal. They'll say, look, as long as my portfolio is, as long as I'm able to retire in 10 years or pay for my kids' college, I don't care what you do, just get me to that goal. Because in that case, the goal is the priority, right? I don't fault them for feeling that way. Just don't come back to me in a year and go, oh, I can't believe I own this cup. Well,
they're in the news for this.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. And that, some of that comes to really understanding who clients are. And I think that's the piece. Like, as an industry, when you look at what I do and what other wealth managers do now, most of us are no longer in the transactional space. We're not just trying to buy and sell something. I'm trying to create for you a portfolio that means something to you. And
sure.
And it's customized to that person. If it's I want to buy a business in 10 years, well then let's figure out how we're going to do that. And what does that look like and how do we do it? Or I want to sell my business in 10 years so I can spend time with my grandkids. Great. Let's figure out how to do that and what that looks like and how to be able to sustain the life that you're looking for. And everybody's different. And I think that's the thing, like when you kind of look at our industry as a whole and where it's gone, is that you've really got to understand that about people, is that the cookie cutter, here's your, married 2 kids, here's your box. Oh, you have 3 kids? I'm going to take away this box and put you in this box. That doesn't work anymore because people are too knowledgeable. The information age has actually I feel it's actually made people like me even more important because you get so much information that sometimes you just have to parse through it. And let me be the guy that parses it.
Yeah, you're the expert. That's why we bring you in. And, in my industry, we're within financial services, and some people say we don't belong there, but we do. We're risk and we're insurance. That's part of the whole financial services industry.
Absolutely.
We have our place. But one thing that we like to point out is, in our industry, brokers get a really bad name. And I say this as a recovering broker. They get a really bad name because of some things they've done in the past. But they are necessary to our industry because, like you, they're an expert. They help that HR manager, the CFO, parse through all that information of insurance that you need to provide for your company's health plan. So understanding that and grasping everything from the financials to the compliance and how that impacts company culture and what HR wants to do. And, to your point, on our side too, we're taking care of families.
Yeah.
We're taking care of people. And that's the most important part that I like about it. I mean, I help companies all over the U.S. that are municipalities, in aviation, in agriculture. And at the end of the day, the common denominator is that person that needs to take care of their health, needs some help, and we help them parse through all that stuff. So, it's great that you do that. And what advice do you give your kids for investing in the future and planning out their lives?
I think the biggest thing that I'll give not only my kids but just people in general is like finances. And financial planning is exactly that. It is a plan. You have to have a plan. You don't just jump in your car, start it up, pull out of the driveway and go, now what? Right? You have a destination in mind. You have a route planned in mind when we do that for the most part. Now, you're going to get detours. There's going to be construction. There's going to be accidents. There's going to be things that, hey, I got to turn left when I meant to turn right. And you're going to have to adjust to that. Your financial portfolio should be relatively the same, right? You've got an end goal. You need to, and that's where you want to go. I feel like a lot of times what people are missing is that they don't have a roadmap. They're just jumping in the car thinking, okay, I just got to get there.
Sure.
And it's going to happen. I'm going to magically end up getting there. Well, you've got a plan to get there. You've actually got to figure out what that looks like. So for my 9-year-old, kind of the conversation right now is he wanted to, this is my child, he wanted a lawnmower for Christmas. All he asked for. His friend, his
I have
neighbor.
a feeling he was thinking about a business plan.
His neighbor had a lawnmower. He liked mowing the lawn. He said, Dad, I want to start mowing our lawn. Now, as again, the youngest child.
You never had to mow the lawn.
Oh, no. The exact opposite.
Oh, I'll say as the middle child, I always had to mow the lawn.
No. As brothers left the house, all of those things fell to me, and I hated it when I was a kid. So that was one of those conversations with my soon-to-be wife. Like, I will fold laundry, I will clean toilets, I'll clean windows, I'll do dishes.
Mow the lawn.
I will not mow the lawn. I do not do yard work. At the time, up in the Northeast, it would kick up my allergies really bad. I was miserable. I hated it. There's also a reason I don't live where it snows for the exact same reason. I am not shoveling snow. I refuse to do it.
Like, no, bad memories from childhood.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that
hey,
anymore.
8 years in Arizona and now in North Texas, like the chance of snow, very small, right? Like I will take it. So we had always hired somebody. So, okay, if you want to do it, that's fine. Like, here's how much. And we came to an agreement, I think it's $20. 10 in the front yard, 10 in the backyard every time that he does it. And, so for him right now, it's like, oh, I want to buy this Xbox. Great. Here's how many lawns you're going to have to mow to get there at this price. And boom, boom. And like sitting down with him and showing him the math. Now he's got a roadmap, right?
Sure.
Now he's got a plan that says, oh, so if I do 10 lawns, I'll get $200, like boom, 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 like. And he's started to figure out, oh, that means I can't buy it till the end of the summer. Well, maybe you should go talk to a neighbor and see if you could do their lawn. Now if you're already out doing our lawn, go do the neighbor's lawn. Hey, that's $20. Like, and kind of talking through that is at his level. I think that's the discussions where it needs to be right now. Is just here's your goal, here's what it looks like. As they get older, the goal just gets bigger, or it changes direction.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to buy a car. They want the new shoes that are out.
Right.
Any of that stuff.
Yeah, and my daughter, I got to fix the screen on my phone. Okay, here's how much a screen costs. Boom, boom, boom. What are you doing to earn to be able to get there? So I think like if you kind of can lay that foundation at a very young age, it'll help kind of just feed on itself. Because then it becomes a mindset, just like working out, just like food, like all those things. It becomes repetition, and you start to
commitment,
and you just start to think about it differently. And oh, by the way, like those discussions at a very small level is what I grew up with. I had to learn that a lot on my own, just through my own experiences. So again, not taking away from my parents, but like it just wasn't something we talked about. Again. Indian immigrant family, it's kind of like Bruno. We don't talk about it. Like we don't talk about money.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have enough money, stop asking. Yeah, but what is this? What is this? Like, and it was always like, you'll learn when you're older. You'll learn when you're older.
No, it was the same. We never talked about finances. I had to learn about finances myself. Yeah. Unfortunately, through hard times of finances. Yeah. Okay, well, I need to earn some more money. I need to do this. And I think it's those small pieces that we're still missing today. And that's why we're having this big gap open up on generations being better off than others. And there's some stuff that, that I personally believe as a millennial, there's reasons we can't purchase homes, and we've taken out way too much debt in education.
Agreed.
Way overrated, I think, is what I would say for higher education. It's coming from someone that has a doctorate and worked in higher education. And I think one of the problems is, the federal funding of education. And we've seen the cost of tuition go up drastically higher than inflation because those loans were now federally backed.
Yep.
And I remember meeting, some old Aggies before I went to A&M that were like, oh, when I was at A&M, it cost this much money, and I worked a job to pay for that. And you don't get that anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone is there on a student loan or on mommy and daddy's dime. So there's not that work ethic in college anymore. I think that's missing.
And I think, some of the stuff we've kind of communicated before this, right? Like, is college worth it, right? I agree with, I think it was Spencer, right? That was the first episode, Spencer Smith.
Spencer was the first episode.
In some cases, yes.
Yes.
Right? I want my doctors to have a degree. I'd like my lawyer to have a degree, right?
Yeah.
I want the
You don't want
engineer
them to have all their knowledge from YouTube.
right. But I also look around, and this was, again, something that was not necessarily talked about, or was talked about in my house, and the answer was, no way in hell are you ever going to be a plumber. No way. Why would you do that? You're going to go to college. Like, it was just, you were going to go to college. That's the way to do it. That's how you succeed in life. You ever hired a plumber?
They charge a lot of money.
Those guys make really good money.
Like, I need $200 just to show up.
Yeah. I was like, you fixed the toilet, $400, okay, because I'm not doing it, right? So I think, and I believe, like, we've actually seen a little bit of a genesis in education over the last couple of years.
Yes.
I think people are starting to get more comfortable with the idea because of things like Mike Rowe, who did the dirty jobs.
Yeah.
And I think he really brought it to the forefront. Like, this country is woefully short of plumbers and electricians and carpenters. And if you have a child that shows the aptitude and the drive to go do that, why wouldn't you have them do that? Why wouldn't I have my child be a welder that after 2 years of experience making six-figure salary? Why not? Right? Like, that's absolutely a fantastic way to start your career and live. Now, what I'll tell my son, again, you'd be happy with your son being a plumber? Well, yeah, and I'd be really happy if he owned his own plumbing company.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's a program in Arkansas called Be Pro, Be Proud. And it's funneling women and children, or excuse me, boys and girls, into technical colleges to learn plumbing, to learn welding, all the different jobs. And I was part of Leadership Arkansas when I lived in Arkansas, and it was run by the Chamber of Commerce, and we would take tours on the industry in Arkansas, and going and taking a tour of a steel mill, and seeing how much is involved in creating steel, and how much they get paid. And the general manager of the steel mill said, it's hard to find people to do this job.
Yeah.
And he's like, but what they don't understand is they can go to a technical school and learn this and spend maybe $20,000. And then they can come and work for me. And right out of the gate, I'll pay them $60,000. And he's just like, 2 years after that, they normally make $80,000. 4 years after that, they're usually now qualified to be in a management position. He's like, that's a six-figure job right there. And in rural Arkansas, 6 figures goes a hell of a long way.
Sure.
He's like, that's a better route than sending them up to Fayetteville to go to school or somewhere else to go to school.
And get a degree that they're not using or is not applicable or just doesn't have a marketable skill associated with it. Underwater basket weaving is really cool, but nobody needs underwater basket weavers, right?
I took badminton 2 times. 3 times. 3 times. I was a kinesiology major, so badminton 3 times. I did bowling twice. And people wonder why I'm really good at random activities in sports. I paid to do it, so I hope I learned something.
My degree is in random sports.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a hell of a bocce ball player.
Yeah, we never played bocce ball, but I learned how. I'm pretty decent at it. It's just all physics to me. I'm just like, that's the same thing with pool. I'm like, that's physics. That's geometry. So, shout out to all my math teachers and science teachers.
That's right.
I'm still using it today. Not in the manner that. Yeah, not in the manner you thought, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I think I honestly, I think education from the pandemic, even at the grade school level, like there's a handful of people that I know, and I'm sure you've run into them too, is just they pulled their kids out of school, they started doing online, or they found this other curriculum and they got involved with it, and their child started to thrive in that. And they're reading 2-3 grade levels above, or doing math 2-3 grade levels above. Why would you send them back to school? They are excelling now in an academic level because they found a model that fit them. And I think like a lot more people just opened your eyes. You remember, and you and I are close enough in age that the only people who homeschooled were those weird religious folks, right? Like, it was those weird people that think Jesus rode around on dinosaurs.
Sorry, I'm picturing Jesus on a T-Rex right now.
But it's true, right? Like the thought of homeschool or alternative education when I was a kid was like only the weirdos.
There was a reason they were
there was a reason they were
weird,
homeschooled. All the behavioral problems. That's what we did. Like it's just not that way. Like there are enough other avenues and options out there now that I think people and families, if they're not aware of it, they should look into it, because maybe sitting in a school with 30 other kids is not right for your student. It's not right for your kid. It's not the right environment. And on top of that, we as parents, particularly as fathers, have to be comfortable advocating for that. And that's hard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we did the whole homeschool thing when everyone was at home.
Yeah.
And my son hated it. I hated it. His mom hated it. We just don't have enough time in the day to do it and help him. And my son is just like me. He's an extrovert. He's a people person. He thrives around that human connection.
Yep.
And he is back in school this year after going to another school last year and being forced to be on a laptop all day with students at home instead of receiving instruction in the classroom that he was physically in. And now going to, hey, it's a traditional classroom setting. He thrives in that, learning from other people, talking to other people. And it's that, I personally believe it's that human connection that we've all forgotten about during the pandemic.
Sure.
And I'm happy schools in Texas have been open quite a bit during the pandemic, and everyone's back in person. And it's really learning from the other people. I mean, that's pretty much the premise of this podcast, is learning from other dads and sharing that knowledge. Hey, how did you deal with this? And how did you deal with that? And I had a conversation with a buddy last night at the Stars game, which is why I have my beard. It's playoffs.
Playoff beard?
Yeah,
Very nice.
playoff beard in
Very
hockey.
nice.
You don't shave. So, we had he has 2 daughters. I'm like, dude, I don't even want to think about where I'd have to start in raising a daughter, and you're doing an awesome job. And we talked about our childhoods and how we were raised, and the subject of bullying was brought up.
Oh, really?
And I told him, I was like, dude, I was never a bullier. I was usually a protector, and I'm just a nice person in general. I don't want to hurt anybody. I was like, but I remember the one time I bullied someone, or I jumped in with some bullying. I was like, I still remember it to this day at 39 years old, because it still makes me feel like shit.
Yeah.
And, to do that, to someone, and, it sucks. It may have affected that person in some way. It may have not, but I know at the end of the day it was wrong, and I never did it again. And, but growing up with brothers, you bully each other and you pick on each other. You make fun of them. You make names. And, it really, I think we talked about this on the phone a couple weeks ago. It's really creating that hardened outer shell that protects you from a lot of the bullying, and the comments just slide off you when you do that. And, that was part of the reason I joined the Marine Corps. I liked that camaraderie and that joking around,
Mm-hmm.
and that dishing it out and taking it as well. And it's fun. I think it's overlooked nowadays as well. And I often say, the kids are soft nowadays. Any trigger word and things hurt their feelings. And as a dad, I've had to understand it a little bit more. And I have, it's weird. I have really mature conversations with my son on, tell me about this. How's this affecting you? And it's just, I tell people I turned into a big baby when I became a father. Like I cry during movies now, and I cry thinking about things. And you're not the only one. That Marine with the hard shell is no longer there anymore.
You are not the only one. We all at some level we do it. I do. I know I do. Honestly, I think and I think that's important. I think that's the flip side of it. So, my family, very much growing up, it was stuff those emotions down, present.
Same, yeah. I think the Indian culture is a lot like the Latin culture, just stuff it down.
So quick side note: what do Hispanic mothers call a flip flop? It's a chancla.
Yeah.
Chancla, right? In India, it's called a chappal. hundreds of thousands of miles apart from each other on opposite sides
Very
of the
similar
planet,
word.
and that word is basically the same, right?
And,
It's the tool used to discipline children, right? Like that.
Yep. Slap.
So yeah, there's a lot of us brown folk all kind of think the same way. But I think like, it's very much right, like stuff that piece down, and that's one thing that like I think again from the pandemic is kind of brought out from a lot of more men. Like, no, you got to go work through that, and I see that a lot with my son. Right, like you're dealing with this, like work through it. It doesn't mean I accept you throwing your bat on a baseball field when you strike out. No, like you can be upset. You've got to work through that and figure that out, and that cycle, like we've got to get shorter around that. And he's not the only one. He's not unique in that respect. If you watch, come out to an 8-9-year-old baseball game, there's a lot of tears. And it's not because anybody's yelling at it. It's because that child is kind of taken on, like, I have to be perfect, or I have to be great, or I can't believe I did that. So there is a happy balance of, like, let that emotion out, let it go, and move on. And that's the piece that I think what you're talking about, right? Like, where do kids, like, I don't think we're as... I try to be a little harder on my kids about the move on piece. Like you can feel whatever you want to feel. But at the end of the day, you've got to move on. There's got to be that action that says, okay, like.
Oh, sure. Otherwise, you're just sweeping it under the carpet.
Or you're just sitting in it and you're not doing anything. And then it does become we have to coddle and we have to hold So, but it's a fine balance. And much like anything, it's like it depends on the kid, right? My daughter and my son are two, they approach problems so differently from one another, and how they react to them is so different from one another. My son doesn't get it. It's slamming it on the desk. It's anger. He's,
It's the rage compound.
My daughter doesn't get something. She goes, okay, give me another try. Let me go at this again. And she will go at it again until she gets it, or she'll just won't get it. And then like her patience is a lot more around things like that. So, it's funny that you say, right? Like are kids weak? I've heard something, right? Strong, when I say men, right? Mankind, right? Strong men make good times. Good times make weak men. Weak men make bad times. Bad times make strong men. And you just it's like, are we just in a time of such good times that it's time for us to show a little bit of weakness? I don't know. Sure. Maybe that's what COVID was all about, right? Like,
I think so. Yeah. It's forced a lot of us to do some introspection and some thinking, and we're coming up on time. And I like to end the podcast with just a question of if you were no longer with us today, what would you want your kids to know?
I would. I want them to know integrity, right? Do what's right when nobody's watching, right? Don't ever sacrifice that for yourself. I want them to, if they're sorry, say you're sorry and mean it. Right? Be sincere about it. Hey, if you mess something up, if there's something in your life that you took responsibility for that you screwed up, like go accept that and say you're sorry and mean it to that person. And don't be afraid to say I love you. Pick up the phone. Again, losing 2 parents in the last 2 years, right? Like, this was my first Mother's Day without my mom.
I'm sure it was hard. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, you had that moment. It's like, man, I just like, there were so many times that she was a royal pain in my butt, but I'd still love to pick up the phone and at least wish her a happy Mother's Day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, don't take those moments for granted. So I think like, that would be the things, like if I was no longer on this earth, I'd want them to know, that's how I look at it and say, like, you learned something good. You're a good human being if you can do those things.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Great way to end the podcast. And, thank you again, Baison, for joining us. And, everyone tune in every other week. We'll have a new episode, new Rad Dad, talking about, how they grew up, how they're raising their kids in this crazy time. So have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining Rad Dad Podcast, everyone. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.